Hola, weirdos. It is Thursday again. I'm Mackenzie, and I am joined, as always, by...
I'm Sarah.
I'm Chris.
And this podcast is for weirdos.
Hey, Mackenzie, what are we doing today? You said hola. Why'd you do that?
Well, we're talking today about a haunted location.
A
Haunted?
haunted location.
Haunted.
Invariably, perhaps one of the most haunted locations we have thus discussed.
Ooh.
We are talking today about the Castillo de San Marcos.
I've never heard of this place.
Really, truly?
Really, truly, I've never heard of this place.
That's shocking to me. Do you know anything about the Castillo de San Marcos?
I don't think so.
That is also shocking to me with the field that we are in. That is very surprising to me. Are you prepared to learn a lot?
I'm prepared to learn so many things.
Okay, because I have so much history.
Yay!
Hell yeah, brother.
So, the Castillo de San Marcos was built by the Spanish in St. Augustine to
Florida?
St. Augustine, Florida,
Okay.
to defend Florida and the Atlantic trade route. The Castillo de San Marcos National Monument preserves the oldest masonry fortification in the continental United States and interprets more than 450 years of cultural intersections.
Is it that big white wall?
It's not. It's kind of white. Just hold on.
Okay. Maybe I have been there
So
for like
I've never
10
been to St.
minutes.
Augustine,
So the groundbreaking for that Castillo de San Marcos
the breaking of ground.
was about 4:00 on the afternoon on Sunday, October 2nd, 1672.
Jesus.
So we are about 100 years before
the United States.
the United States.
Estados Unidos.
This was done by Governor Manuel Sandoya. This stone fort was going to be replacing some smaller wooden forts that had been built in which was at the time the settlement of St. Augustine, and hold the colony of La Florida for Spain.
Neat.
By 1668, so what is that? 4 years before the groundbreaking,
Yeah.
the Castillo de San Marcos was a wooden structure that was super dilapidated.
Rip.
St. Augustine was built as an outpost, but because of its location, it was indirectly defending the Spanish Caribbean and New Spain, Mexico.
Right.
And that particular outpost had never been self-sufficient. The Viceroy of New Spain was supposed to be sending a situado, or subsidy, from his coffers each year to support the garrison in the town of St. Augustine. However, for many years, the subsidy never came.
What a jerk.
By 1668, so again, 4 years before the rebuild,
Yeah.
more than 400,000 pesos, or 8 years of payments, were owed to Florida.
Dang.
The people of St. Augustine were close to starving, and there were certainly no funds to repair the old fort. The beams under the gun platforms, as well as the platforms themselves, were so rotten they couldn't support the cannons anymore. The sea had washed out the shoreline, and the waves crashed against the palisade. The same year, 1668, a pirate ship under the disguised as the Situado from New Spain penetrated St. Augustine's very meager defenses.
Right.
In the confused darkness, the pirates seemed to be everywhere as they stormed ashore. Governor Francisco de la Guerra and a few handfuls of soldiers were able to take refuge in the wooden fort. Others and civilians ran into the woods as the pirates systematically sacked the town. By the time the pirates left the next day, 60 people of the community were dead.
Oof.
The Spanish noted that the pirates had taken careful soundings of the inlet. They probably had intended to come back and seize the fort to make it a base of operations. Otherwise, they would have likely burned the town down
Right.
because that's what pirates did.
That's what pirates did.
So the sack of St. Augustine was kind of a blessing in disguise because it shocked the Spanish officialdom into action.
Right. They were like, oh no, St. Augustine, it's broken.
Yeah. So the governor of Cuba, as well as the viceroy of New Spain, finally sent money and troops to bring St. Augustine up to strength. Back in Spain, Queen Regent Mariana added her authority by ordering the viceroy to pay the Florida funds on time and added a good amount for building a permanent fortress. She also commanded him, the viceroy, to support a 300-man garrison in Florida. So, let's talk about the Castillo.
The Castillo.
So, Castillo de San Marcos stands for St. Mark's Castle.
Yeah.
That's what it translates to in English. Now, is it a fort or is it a castle? You know, the Spanish word is castle, but is it really a castle? Is it more of a fort? Like, what is it? Right? Short answer, both. Both is good.
Right. Well, because a castle is a fortification.
Right.
And fort is just short for fortification.
Right. So it really depends on like who was using the structure and what the purpose it served was. So Merriam-Webster dictionary defines a castle as a large fortified building or set of buildings, a retreat safe against intrusion or invasion. Oxford English Dictionary says it is a large building, typically of the medieval period, fortified against attack with thick walls, battlements, and towers, and in many cases, a moat. The Real Academia Española states that it is a strong place surrounded by walls, bastions, moats, and other fortifications. The Castillo de San Marcos fits every one of those definitions in one way or at one time or another. It is most definitely a large fortified building that provided a retreat for safety against invasion for the people of St. Augustine. At one time, it housed over 1,500 people for 51 days during a siege by the English. It also had thick walls, battlements, towers, and a moat.
It had a moat?
We're going to get there.
That's so exciting.
Many of the fortifications that the Spanish built in the New World were named castillos. It is interesting to note that at least two of the wooden forts that preceded the current stone one in St. Augustine were also called the Castillo de San Marcos. So a building does not necessarily need to be made out of stone to be classified as a castillo.
Yeah.
Later in... A lot of my information came directly from the National Park Service because this is a National Historic Monument. So later in the park's story, later in the Castillo story, the Castillo de San Marcos does become referred to as a fort. So while Real Academia Española states that a fortress is a fortified enclosure such as a castle or a citadel, Merriam-Webster defines a fort as a fortified place occupied only by troops and surrounded with such works as a ditch, rampart, or parapet. When the British gained control of Florida through the 1763 Treaty of Paris, they renamed the building Fort St. Mark, and the U.S. Army decided in 1825 to call it Fort Marion. Under those occupations, it was indeed used for, it was straight military function.
Gotcha.
The British and the Americans did not plan to use it as a place of refuge for the citizens of St. Augustine. They both used it as barracks for military storage and occasionally as a military prison. And in 1942, the National Park Service and the U.S. Congress decided to restore its original name in honor of its unique Spanish history, so it went back to being called the Castillo de San Marcos. So, what does it look like? What is it built like?
What do it look like?
What do it look like?
It is built with a bastion system. So the bastion system originated in Italy in the 15th century. It's a kind of star-shaped. So it's 4 points, but it's kind of like a... Yeah. Yeah? Yeah. Okay. I drew it in the air for everybody. I don't know how to use my big girl words to describe what it is shaped as.
So the shape that she drew was square, but got bendy sides.
With pointy points.
Pointy points, bendy sides.
Yeah.
They bend in toward middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Concave sides.
Because of the change in warfare brought about by black powder weapons,
Hell yeah, brother.
they had to create new types of defensive structures to adapted to both withstand or avoid the impact of cannon projectiles,
Right.
but also to effectively mount cannons to repel attackers.
Right.
Of the major architectural versions, the bastion system was named for the projecting diamond or angle formations added onto the fort walls, and it was the most commonly and effectively used.
That makes sense.
Castillo de San Marcos is also super unique in the material used for construction.
What is it made out of?
So the Castillo is one of only 2 fortifications in the world built out of a semi-rare form of limestone called coquina. The other is the Fort Matanzas National Monument, 14 miles south of St. Augustine.
Okay.
So what is coquina? Thousands of years ago, the tiny coquina clam Donax variabilis lived in the shallow waters of coastal Florida, as they still do. This critter still exists.
They're still around.
They are these small pink, lavender, or white shells that people see at the beach at the waterline.
Those are so pretty.
And as the resident clam died, the shells would accumulate in layers year after year, century after century, for thousands of years, forming submerged deposits several feet thick. During the last ice age, the sea levels dropped, exposing these shell layers to air and rain. Eventually, the shell became covered with soil and then trees and other vegetation. Rainwater percolating through the dead vegetation and soil picked up carbon dioxide and became carbonic acid, the same water that makes soda fizz. As this weak acid soaked downward, it dissolved some of the calcium in the shells, producing calcium carbonate, which solidified in lower layers, much like how flowstone and stalactites are formed in caves.
Neat.
This material glued the shell fragments together into a porous type of limestone we now call coquina, which is Spanish for tiny shell. Although found in very few places in the world, the conditions were just right for coquina formation along the east coast of Florida. The Spanish knew about this rock, and while they might have picked up loose chunks, the people of St. Augustine were primarily soldiers, not stonemasons. And so a lot of this rock just kind of sat around forever. Wood was more plentiful. At first, for sure, it was more plentiful. And it was easier to work with.
Yeah.
However, the British were settling the Carolinas around this same time.
Criminal.
And Charleston, was only a 2-day sail from St. Augustine. And so they were like, well, if the British are like preparing,
they're close. We gotta build
something better
out of rocks.
And so,
look, a bunch of rocks.
As a result, when in 1672 they started building the stone fortress, the coquina stone was quarried in the area of present-day Anastasia State Park on Anastasia Island. Military engineers and stonemasons were brought in from Spain. Convicts and additional soldiers were brought in from Cuba. Oyster shells were burned into lime and then mixed with sand and water to make mortar.
Neat.
And then slowly they were building walls, right? And since nobody had ever built a fort or any kind of large building out of coquina before, they didn't know how strong the material was going to be. They knew it wouldn't burn and that termites wouldn't eat it.
Right.
But they didn't
That's
know
all they got.
They didn't know how well these seashells would last under cannon fire. So
obviously pretty well.
So they overcompensated, is what they did.
You know what? Fair enough.
They went, let's build the walls really fucking thick.
Are an average of 12 feet thick. The walls on the ocean side are as thick as 19 feet.
Jesus.
The first phase of construction was completed in 1695. So it started in 72, was completed in 95.
Okay.
At the time, the Castillo looked very different than it did now. The walls were roughly 5 feet shorter than they are today, and the rooms were half their current size. This larger courtyard allowed for the townspeople to take refuge inside. The Castillo de San Marcos is a super unique architecture piece in North America, as the only extant 17th century military construction in the country and the oldest masonry fortress in the United States. It's a great example of the Vauban style of fortification and the culminations of hundreds of years of military defense engineering prior.
Neat.
So again, coquina is super light and also porous. So
Right.
most people would think, well, that's a really shitty thing to build a military fortress out of.
She's still there.
They didn't have a lot of options though.
Yeah.
And the porosity of the coquina actually turned out to have a really great unexpected benefit. Because of the conglomerate mixture, it actually contains millions of tiny little air pockets that make it compressible. So a cannonball fired at a more solid material like brick or granite would shatter the wall into like shards.
It bounces.
No,
I know it doesn't, but that's like the image I have.
but the cannonballs fired at the walls of the Castillo burrowed their way in and stuck there, much like if you shot a BB gun at styrofoam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the thick coquina walls absorbed or deflected projectiles rather than yielding to them, providing such a well-lived fortress.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's pretty cool.
So the fortress itself is, a product and evidence of the multitude of forces that are both political and technological that created the competition for empire during the colonial era.
Right.
But really, above all else, it is an enduring legacy of the craftsmanship and skills of the engineers, artisans, and laborers who built the Castillo. The four bastions are named. The four corners are named San Pedro, San Augustine, San Carlos, and San Pablo, with a ravelin protecting the sally port. On the two landward sides, a large glacis was constructed, which would force any of the attackers to advance upward towards the fort's cannons and allow the cannon shot to proceed downslope for greater efficiency in hitting multiple targets. There's also an artificial mound built. The artificial mound created by the glacis in front of the walls helped to protect them from direct cannon fire attempting to breach them.
Makes sense.
Immediately surrounding the fort was a moat that was usually kept dry, but it could be flooded with seawater to a depth of about a foot in case of attack by land.
That's
so it
cool.
didn't have to be super deep to be effective.
Yeah, crossing water sucks.
It's hard.
Multiple embrasures were built into the curtain wall along the top of the fort, as well as into the bastions for the deployment of a cannon of various calibers. Infantry embrasures were also built into the walls below the level of the terraplane for the deployment of muskets by the fort's defenders.
Okay.
So what kind of weapons did the Castillo have? They had a mixture of both iron and bronze cannons.
Yeah.
So why would they have a mix of metals? Iron was specifically these cannons were cast iron.
Yeah.
It was super commonly used because it was lighter and it was less expensive material. So a 24-pounder iron cannon cost $21,614 US dollars based on 2015 USD.
Okay.
A bronze cannon of the same weight would have cost 46,374 2015 US dollars.
So like double.
So like double. Most fortifications preferred the iron. However, iron was far more vulnerable to the elements and rusted super easily.
Yeah.
Iron guns would also become more brittle and dangerous over a shorter period of time and were subject to exploding. And when expended, they just had to scrap the iron. They couldn't reuse it for anything.
Right, because it's because of the heat.
Yeah.
Because it's not like you can't remelt it down because it's already that iron has already been heat treated by shooting cannonballs out of it
Right.
many times.
It's been spent.
Yeah,
It
it's
cannot
done.
be used
So bronze, though heavier, withstood the stress of firing a lot better.
Yeah.
And it actually needed less metal to construct the cannon. The non-rusting bronze was preferred for the damp environments of ships and seacoast forts. A bronze cannon had nearly twice the life expectancy of an iron gun, and once expended, the bronze could be melted down and recast into a new weapon. Early Spanish bronze artillery could also be described as beautiful works of art. Okay. Go ahead.
Kron's Bannon.
Fuck you.
I hate you. Some of them are basic in design, while others are very ornately detailed. Today, all of the bronze guns at the Castillo are covered in green patina.
Yeah.
When they were first made, they were bright and shiny like a penny. Most of the bronze guns have several key features in common. At the back of the gun, you can find the name of the maker, the city it was made, and the date the gun was manufactured. Moving
Nice.
towards the muzzle, you'll find the royal coat of arms of the Spanish king and queen who reigned during the making of the weapon.
Rad.
Next are a couple of raised handles called dolphins to move the weapon.
Yeah.
Continuing to move to the front of the gun, there's a banner that bears the cannon's names.
Cannons were named?
Yes.
Hell yeah.
I will tell you. I have a list of
Yes.
every cannon that's on the property.
Yeah.
4 of the Castillo's cannons also have a second larger banner that reads Voilati Volmina Regis, thunderbolts of an offended or angry king. Each trunnion, the pivot bars on the side of the gun, lists where the metal was acquired, the gun's maintenance record, and how much the weapon weighs. Other features found on some of the cannons include capture dates stamped by the U.S. Army. Now
Nice.
let's go through the 38 cannons that the Castillo has.
Tag yourself as we go through them.
Okay. So these are in order where they would be when you're looking at a map. They're
Got it.
numbered on a map. So number 1 is a 4-pounder cannon. It's made of bronze. It was made in Seville in 1737. Its name is La Siblia, the fortune teller. Sibilla, La Sibilla. It was gifted to the National Park Service in 1953. Their second cannon is a 16-pounder bronze cannon made in Barcelona in 1743. Named is El Camillo, which is the Camillus. Transferred from West Point Military Academy in 1962. Interesting note about this one, it was made from recycled bronze.
Ooh, neat.
Number 3 is
Reduce, reuse, recycle. When making weapons of war.
Yep.
Number 3 is a 24-pounder cast iron cannon circa 1750. It was transferred to the National Park Service with the fort in 1935.
Cool. No name?
No name.
Damn.
Most of the cast iron, I think all of the cast iron cannons do not have names.
That's
Only
okay.
the bronze ones.
Only the bronze ones.
That's fair. They're prettier.
So number 4 is an 18-pounder cast iron cannon circa 1750, transferred in 1935. Another interesting note, a Spanish 16-pounder is often described as an English 18-pounder. Number 5 is the same as number 4. It's an 18-pounder cast iron cannon. And then number 6 is a 24-pounder cast iron, circa 1750, transferred with the fort in 1935. Number 7 is the same as number 6. Number 8 is a 12-pounder cast iron cannon, circa 1690, made in Sweden. It was found in the Savannah River in 1914 and gifted to the NPS in 1955.
Sweet.
Number 9 is a 15-inch bronze mortar. It was made in Barcelona, Spain in 1724. It was loaned to the NPS in 1971 and permanently gifted to the fort in 2025. Number
Cool.
10
Recently.
is a bronze 9-inch mortar made in Seville, Spain in 1784. It was gifted to the NPS in 1958. Number 11 is a bronze 8-pounder made in Barcelona, Spain in 1767. This one is named El Venado, the deer. It was gifted to the NPS in 1978. Interestingly, this specific cannon is modeled after the French Gribeauval cannons.
Neat.
Number 12 is a bronze 6-pounder cannon made in Seville, Spain in 1762. It was transferred from West Point Military Academy in 1962. Number 13 is a bronze 16-pounder made in Seville, Spain in 1735, named El Dedalo, the Daedalus.
Okay.
Loaned to the NPS in 1971, permanently gifted in 2025. Number 14 is a bronze 12-pounder made in Seville, Spain in 1798, named Faceno, which is braggart, received from West Point Military Academy in 1962. Number 15 is a bronze 4-pounder made in Seville, Spain in 1795, named Abilud, which is older brother or biblical name. It was gifted to the NPS in 1960. Number 16 is a cast iron 2-pounder 16 and 17 are both cast iron 2-pounders, circa 1702, transferred in 1935.
Cool.
18 is a 9-inch bronze mortar made in Barcelona, Spain in 1733, named El Icaro, the Icarus, gifted to the NPS in 1960.
Daedalus and Icarus are probably from the same.
Number 19 is
Yeah.
a 10-inch bronze mortar made in Seville, Spain in 1807, named as Abajado, the crouching one, gifted to the NPS in 1960. Number 20 is a 15-inch bronze mortar made in Barcelona, Spain in 1724. It was loaned to the NPS in 1971, permanently gifted in 2025. This particular cannon has a rare Louis I crest on it.
Neat.
Number 21 is a 9-inch bronze mortar made in Seville, Spain in 1774, gifted to the NPS in 1958. Number 22 is a 3-pounder cast iron, circa 1690. It was found buried in St. Augustine, gifted to the NPS in 1954. Number 23 is a cast iron 4-pounder, circa 1700, also found buried in St. Augustine, gifted to the NPS in 1954. Number 24 is a cast iron 9-pounder, circa 1690. It was made in Sweden, partially buried at the northeast corner of St. George and King Street. It was gifted to the NPS in 1935. Number 25 is a cast iron 9-pounder, circa 1690, made in Sweden, possibly from the 1715 Plate Fleet wreck. It was found buried on the beach near San Sebastian Inlet, Florida, gifted to the NPS in 1946.
Neat.
Number 26 is a bronze 4-pounder made in Barcelona, Spain in 1768, named El Jazmín, the Jasmine, transferred to the NPS in 1962. Number 27 is a cast iron 16-pounder, circa 1750, transferred to the NPS with the fort in 1935. However, this one is really heavily corroded compared to all of the other cannons. The next two are located inside the courtyard or an inside room inside the fort.
Okay.
So 28 is a bronze 16-pounder made in Seville, Spain in 1764, named El Milanes, the one from Milan, loaned to NPS in 1971, permanently gifted in 2025. Number 29 is a cannon fragment. It's cast iron. It exploded during the siege of 1702, which I will talk about in just a minute.
Cool.
So basically what had happened is they were defending from the Carolinians, and suddenly the 16-pound gun, it was in the San Pablo Northwest Bastion. This exploded. It killed the gunner in charge of the bastion, another artilleryman, and a militiaman. 5 others were seriously injured. An investigation found that the gun had been overloaded with round shot, bar shot, and grape shot. The gun was also found to be slightly cracked prior to the explosion. The governor blamed the artillerymen for this disaster since they had failed to check the gun and not detected the crack.
Okay.
These ones are located in the water battery, these last 8 on the seawall. So number 30 was a 24-pounder howitzer made out of cast iron. Model was 1815 to 1819. It was made by John Mason in the Columbia Foundry in the U.S., transferred in 1935. Numbers 31 and 32 are the same.
Okay.
33 is a cast iron 8-inch siege howitzer. Model 1846. It was made in the West Point Foundry in New York. Transferred in 1935. 34 and 35 are the same.
Okay.
36 is an 8-inch Seacoast howitzer, cast iron, model 1841, made by John Mason at the Columbia Foundry, transferred in 1935. 37 is the same as 36. And the last one is a 32-pounder Seacoast cannon, cast iron. The model is 1841. It is missing its left trunnion. It was found in the waters off Naval Station Mayport, Jacksonville, Florida, transferred to the NPS in 1978.
Amazing. Tag yourself. I
That's
think
super cool.
I'm the deer.
You're the deer?
I'm the deer.
I'm Icarus.
You're Icarus?
Yeah. Also, for our listeners, if you are listening to this episode and you go, what does that sound? Every time Mackenzie said Barcelona, I quietly went, Barcelona.
I hate
into my microphone.
I also did it sometimes.
With a Castilian accent. I did a
Castilian.
Barcelona.
Barcelona.
Just
Barcelona.
the tiniest little whisper.
Get out of here with your stupid Castilian Spanish.
You said Barcelona, and I went Barcelona the first time, and I was like, well, now you gotta keep doing it.
Can I take us off track for a split second?
Yes, you may.
Okay. So I have been here, and
I have also been here.
I did not.
You forgore?
I forgore. I was 17 whenever I was here, and I don't really remember being here at the Castillo.
Mm-hmm.
But my grandma went to school just down the street from me. And so I have a story from my Nana that she would tell us that so she went to an all-girls boarding school in St. Augustine because she was Cuban. So she and her siblings came from Cuba, and she was like 13 or 14, didn't know a lick of English at this boarding school.
Mm-hmm.
By the time she graduated high school, she and the other girls would go to the Castillo to flirt with the sailors there.
Just to kiss boys. Not to kiss boys, but like to kiss boys.
Yeah. she was like, well, we didn't kiss them. We left them be. But we did look.
They went to go look at boys.
They went to go look at the boys, the handsome boys in their white navy uniforms.
Barcelona.
With their little Barcelona. With their little
Their little hats.
Their pillbox hats.
Their little paper hats.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
Anyways.
Cute. All right, let's talk about attacks.
Yay!
Yeah!
So the Siege of 1702, which we just talked about briefly, this was when, so in May of 1702, the War of Spanish Succession, or Queen Anne's War, begins in England and Spain.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. That
was the sound. I will say, it doesn't look like the waveform picked it up,
everybody in the room
but it
heard.
might have.
If it didn't, I'm shocked because everybody in this room heard my stomach make that horrible noise.
Yeah.
So war begins in May, across the pond.
Great.
In September of 1702, Charlestown, Carolina, which is a British colony.
Right.
Because remember, we are pre the Revolutionary War. This is all colonies and all not America.
All owned by different people.
The Estados Unidos do not exist yet.
Yeah.
Estados Unidos.
So
This is Spain still. It's New Spain. It's not yet Mexico, so they sound like that.
They have Castilian Spanish.
specifically,
Estados
Unidos.
Charlestown, the colony in Carolina, declared war on St. Augustine.
That's so funny.
And so James Moore led the attack for the English and he was not a military man.
Iconic. He's just a
kind
guy.
of just a dude, kind of an idiot.
The best.
So he enlisted the help of Colonel Robert Daniel, who was a very well-trained military man.
His name was Colonel.
So early in
Yeah.
October, his Moore moves his 9 ships to Port Royal, which is in Beaufort, South Carolina, to await the arrival of Daniel and their Native American allies before pushing on to St. Augustine. Moore's fleet leaves Port Royal on October 16th, bound for Florida. And so once the English were out to sea, the Spanish don't get any intelligence until they came ashore somewhere in La Florida to attack.
Right.
We don't have any kind of communication devices to track.
Fun.
So commanding the Spanish at St. Augustine was Joseph de Zuniga and Cerda, the governor of Spanish Florida. Zuniga was the man of over 20 years of experience with the Spanish military in a number of different posts throughout the empire.
Cool.
He was described as a thoughtful, inspiring, and cautious leader. As early as October 27th, intelligence of an impending English attack was coming in from the frontier through Spain's Native American allies. Zuniga quickly began to arrange his men and materials. He called for the recent harvest to be brought in from the farms to the town to be stored. All of the livestock was driven into and corralled into the dry moat of the Castillo de San Marcos. These supplies, along with 2 months' worth of rations already in the storerooms of the Castillo, allowed the garrison to hold on until help arrived from the nearest Spanish post, which was Havana, Cuba. Upon receiving the news of the impending attack, Zuniga sent word to Havana, Pensacola, French Mobile, and his own outlying posts in La Florida, asking for additional troops and aid, but it could take 2 to 3 months before the reinforcements would arrive. Zuniga called his own reserve officers and militia to active duty and barred anyone from leaving town without permission. So Moore's forces landed at midnight on November 3rd. So he's talking about this on the 27th. So he has about 6 days, about a week of advance notice.
Yeah.
So they start attacking the Spanish mission at the north end of Amelia Island. So they're not quite to the Castillo yet.
Yeah.
They held all of the island and its missions by the end of the next day.
Jesus.
Wow.
With the loss of the outposts on Amelia and with the knowledge of his own garrison's weaknesses, Zuniga made the decision to use the strength of the Castillo to hold out until the relief could arrive to break a siege. At dawn on November 8th, Zuniga was inspecting the Castillo's artillery. The English fleet came into view off the mouth of the inlet. All that day and into the next, supplies and equipment were moved into the Castillo as the English fleet moved to blockade the harbor of St. Augustine.
Lovely.
Great. On the 9th, with the arrival of the Spanish refugees from the surrounding countryside, the word came of an English army moving overland toward the city, speeding up the evacuation. By the 10th, almost 1,500 people had taken refuge inside the Castillo.
Wow. That's a lot.
That's a
Upon
lot of
arrival, the English land forces burned the mission at Nombre de Dios, a few hundred yards north of the fortress. This attack was broken up by a Spanish patrol stampeding 163 head of cattle through the forming English lines and down into the moat. That day
Cows are scary.
was also
Yeah.
the day that the 16-pounder iron cannon exploded.
Go boom.
I mean,
it's-
cows will run you over.
Cows will
Yeah.
run you over.
So it says fragment in the artillery listing. It's apparently half the cannon. So
I mean, that's a fragment.
big
It's
fragment.
a big fragment, but it still is a fragment.
So this attack is now fully a siege. The English were unable to attack the Castillo by direct assault, so they surrounded the fort and cut off the supply lines. Digging a series of trenches, the English inched closer to the Castillo, attempting to get their cannon in a position to breach its walls. The Spanish fired constantly on the English to slow their progress, and by November 22nd, remember they started putting people in there on October 27th.
Yeah.
By November 22nd, the English realized their small cannons completely ineffective against the fortress walls.
Yeah.
They
They're
sent-
made out of sponge.
They spent to Jamaica for larger cannons, mortars, and bombs. The heaviest fighting of the siege was on November 25th. That's my wedding anniversary.
Oh, my God.
When both sides engaged in a 24-hour gun duel that included both sides setting fire to sections of the city to clear lanes for firing.
Hell yeah.
On Christmas Eve,
Sometimes you got to burn down the city so you can shoot a gun.
On
Yep.
Christmas Eve, the supply ships from Charlestown arrived in support of Moore's forces, but this was followed on the 26th by the arrival of the much hoped for Spanish relief from Havana, and in the form of 4 Spanish man-of-war ships.
Jesus.
Hell
His
yeah,
position untenable in the face of a fresh army behind him and the Castillo still before him, Moore's attack was over. After setting their ships ablaze, the English troops marched up the beach toward the mouth of the St. Johns River. Daniel's troops and their native allies marched up the inland waterway after burning the rest of St. Augustine to the ground. So they went, we can't get your fort, but fuck you.
We're also going to burn our own boats.
So we're stuck here. You have to deal with us.
So basically, the Castillo did take damage after this attack in 1702. They did do some construction rebuild and some fortifying that has gotten the Castillo to kind of what it looks like today. And then they were not attacked again until 1740. I'm sure they were attacked in small ways. There was another siege in 1740. This one was done by James Oglethorpe, who was the founder of the Georgia colony.
Still a funny name.
Yep.
Oglethorpe.
So in 1738 is kind of when this started. Robert this is hilarious. I don't know that I had ever heard of this. I'm sure I kind of have. It's called the War of Jenkins' Ear. In March of 1738, Captain Robert Jenkins was summoned before a committee of the House of Commons, where he exhibited a severed ear pickled in a jar and claimed it was cut off in April of 1731 in the West Indies by Spanish coast guards who had boarded his ship, pillaged it, and set it adrift.
Whose ear?
And cut his ear off. I think
His
it's
ear.
Okay.
He pickled his own ear.
The way that was phrased was like he presented a jar with an ear in it.
Sorry.
And I was like,
As apparently his ear.
whose?
According to Jenkins, the Spanish Coast Guard sloop San Antonio intercepted him near Havana and claimed he was violating the trade laws. Jenkins supposedly insulted the Spanish captain, Juan de Leon Fandino,
Don't do that.
for which Fandino used his sword to cut off one of Jenkins' ears, declaring, "We're the king of England here, and also in violation of the laws, I would do the same for him." That's code for get fucked.
Get fucked. I'm going to cut off your king's ear.
It's like, I'd cut your king's ear if it was
Robert
here. Fuck
Jenkins,
you.
by most accounts, was a scoundrel, a smuggler, a pirate, and apparently a perjurer as well.
Oh.
His story was 7 years old by the time he got around to telling anybody about it, and the details were undoubtedly embellished, if true at all. Never mind that the careful observers of the occasion noticed that under his wig, it appeared that both of his ears were still attached.
Amazing.
But it made good press. Regardless of the truth of the story or whose ear might have been in the jar, Britain seized the opportunity to pick a fight with Spain.
I will reiterate whose ear.
Whose ear?
At stake were the spoils and wealth of the Spanish Main and Great South Sea. What started as a colonial adventure involving Spain and Britain soon grew into a major global conflict with battles in the Americas, India, Europe, and on virtually every ocean of the world.
All over some guy's ear.
Yep.
So,
All over some guy's ear who was not even the guy who was telling the story about the ear.
correct. So, while this is all happening, the English colony of Georgia was established in 1732 as a military buffer between La Florida, which is Spanish colonies,
Yeah.
and the vaguely defined colonies of the Carolinas. This new colony infringed a lot on Spanish territorial claims.
The English infringing?
What?
Crazy.
In 1735, the Spanish launched an unsuccessful surprise attack on Savannah to try to eliminate the threat. James Oglethorpe, the governor of Georgia, decided as a precaution to build a series of defensive forts along the Altamaha River border and raise his own regiment of soldiers. After securing his western flank from the French by treaties with friendly Native American tribes, Georgia was in a position to threaten Spanish Florida by 1738. And with this war that starts in 1738 over this dude's ear,
This guy's ear.
Oglethorpe incited the Creek Indians to start harassing the Spaniards by promising rewards for Spanish scalps. Border raiding and ambushes continued 1939
1939?
17 through 1739.
Gotcha.
Up to the outskirts of St. Augustine. By then,
1939.
the
Payback.
British had put together a plan of attack. There was a combined land force of Highlanders, militia, and native allies, supported by a Royal Navy squadron, and they moved to attack St. Augustine in West Florida and try to wrest Florida from the Spanish. I can't read.
Shit was crazy back then.
Yeah. So St. Augustine's original garrison was of 3 locally raised infantry companies and an artillery detachment numbering only about 350 men. So there's not a lot of people guarding this fort.
Right.
Anticipating trouble from the English, these 350 men were reinforced by 3 regiments from Spain, Havana, and Veracruz. Along with armed natives and militiamen, the military manpower levels in St. Augustine reached almost 1,000. So we went from 350 to 1,000.
I'm just imagining someone standing on top of the Castillo with binoculars being like, well, they're doing something.
Yeah.
Somebody call somebody.
There were also several Spanish privateers working out of St. Augustine's harbor,
Nice.
bringing in numerous British merchant ships as prizes and selling their cargoes at auction on the town plaza.
Iconic.
Their success provided a rare booming economy for the city and supplemented its defense. But during the winter of 1739 to 1740, food supplies were running low, and that's when the British began to invade Florida.
Yeah.
Oglethorpe used Chickasaw, Uchisi, and Creek Scouts to kind of lead the charge and going ahead of them. Basically, so this started in December. St. Augustine was already struggling with food supply for 2,500 people or more. So the Spanish governor sent for word to Havana. Several of the messengers were captured or killed, but finally the much needed help arrived in April. So this lasts for months. And by May, Oglethorpe had successfully encircled and besieged St. Augustine, forcing the inhabitants inside, sheltering the walls of the city, while he bombarded the Castillo for nearly a month.
Rude.
As one Englishman observed, the native rock will not splinter, but will give way to cannonball as though you stick a knife into cheese, which I think is funny.
It's a sponge.
Which is the coquina that we talked about earlier. Also, each night, the Spanish had secretly been repairing and covering up the damage from the day's bombardment.
Nice.
So
That's
while the
amazing.
walls of the city defended the townspeople, the heavy guns of the Castillo and the long-range 9-pounders of the maneuverable Spanish galleys in the harbor held them at bay. This siege was finally lifted. It doesn't say exactly when, but by 1742, the Spanish attempted the invasion of Georgia, but they were repulsed in the Battle of Bloody Marsh near Fort Frederica. And the end of this war over this dude's ear did not bring peace, only kind of a truce. And then basically 6 years from the end of the war of Jenkins' ear, which is the stupidest war I've ever heard of, the French and Indian War started after that, which was not good for anybody. And then at the end of the
Succinct.
the French and Indian War, Florida, the colony of La Florida, was lost to the British. So while St. Augustine never officially fell, it was turned over to the British in whatever year that is, 1740, whatever. It was turned over to the British at the end of the French and the Indian War.
Yeah.
Because of the treaty in Paris, 1763. That's the year I was looking for.
You got there.
Okay. So then they just have kind of a colonial period. We have, the Revolutionary War becomes part of the Americas, right? Like, so on and so forth.
Hooray! It's ours now.
We're gonna
country.
we're gonna skip ahead about 100 years
Iconic.
to
Nothing happened in there.
well, things happened in there, but not anything like
Nothing of
fort
interest.
stuff just happened in there.
Yeah.
Like,
We're good.
Like I'm not getting
Nothing
into
happened in
like
there.
I'm not getting into day-to-day shit of the
The fort forted.
yeah,
They forwarded.
they forted.
They forted.
Excuse you.
This is sad. This next section sad.
Oh, no.
Oh no.
This is
I wasn't prepared for sad.
I just don't. No, it's not funny, jokey. It's sad.
Okay.
In 1830, President Andrew Jackson passed the Indian Removal Act.
Oh.
This
it
act
is
of
sad.
legislation changed the course of history for many Native American tribes. It sparked the Trail of Tears, which was the forced relocation of thousands of tribe members, and it instigated violence and war in many of the locations around the United States. One of these locations was Florida. In accordance with the new act, the Seminole tribe was told they must leave Florida and relocate to Indian Territory, which is now Oklahoma. Some of the chiefs agreed to these terms, hoping to avoid war, and submitted to removal, but others refused. Standing up for their right to stay on their homeland, the Seminoles ignited a resistance that culminated in a 7-year war lasting from 1835 to 1842. The Second Seminole War, as it came to be known, was one of the deadliest and costliest American Indian wars ever fought on U.S. soil.
Huh.
During this war, a group of Seminoles was captured and brought to St. Augustine as prisoners. The way in which they were captured caused an outcry amongst the rest of the Seminoles and many white Americans as well. Seminole leaders, warriors, and their families gathered at Fort Peyton, 7 miles south of St. Augustine, for an intended negotiation. The group had been summoned to that location by General Jessup with the pretense of a peaceful parley. The group approached the fort under a white flag of truce, and as they proceeded to the fort, they were surrounded by soldiers and taken as prisoners. Over 230 prisoners were eventually brought to St. Augustine and imprisoned inside Fort Marion, which is what the Castillo was known as at the time. During their confinement, they were kept in rooms on the west and southwest corner of the fort. They were constantly kept under guard. They were permitted access to the courtyard for daily exercise, but they were not permitted beyond the gates of the sally port. Illness would prove to be a constant concern and pervasive problem during their 2-month confinement in November and December of 1837. Included in the group of prisoners was the famous Seminole war leader Osceola. He was not a chief, which is a common misconception, but he was very influential during the early phase of the war. He was known to be an inspiring speaker who generated enthusiasm and support for the war effort and rallied his troops during the toughest of battles. Unfortunately, Osceola was very ill during his imprisonment, possibly suffering from quinsy or malaria. While imprisoned, he was treated by local physician Dr. Whedon. While the group was eventually moved to Fort Moultrie in Charleston, South Carolina, Dr. Whedon traveled with the prisoners and treated Osceola until his death. Osceola is buried on the fort's property today. Another well-known prisoner at Fort Marion was Coacuchi, or Wildcat. Wildcat was also an influential leader during the war. He, however, was not destined to remain a prisoner in St. Augustine for very long. On the night of November 29th, 1837, he led a daring escape from the fort. On that night, 20 prisoners somehow made their escape to freedom, but the details of that escape are highly debated today. According to U.S. Army records, the prisoners escaped by climbing out of a window in a room in the southwest corner of the fort. Wildcat, who later told his version of the story to an author and reporter, also claimed that he climbed out of the window of the fort, but he claimed that only he and one other man escaped. Some contemporary historians debate that such an escape would not be feasible due to the size of the aforementioned windows in the walls. Other versions and theories have been put forward, but no one truly knows what happened that night. The details of the escape may be less important than the fact that it happened at all. After Wildcat escaped from Fort Marion, he continued to fight with Seminole forces and led many victories in battle. Some historians argue that his escape helped to rally weary fighters to continue their efforts, and that his leadership changed the course of the war. If Wildcat had not escaped, the outcome of the war and the future of the tribe could have been very different. Even today, most members of the Seminole tribe of Florida trace their heritage back to those 20 prisoners who escaped. The war between the Seminole tribe and the U.S. Army concluded in 1842, but there was never an official treaty ending the conflict. In 1842, many of the surviving Seminoles in Florida fled south, seeking refuge in the Everglades, and the Army gave up their effort to remove them from the territory. To this day, the Seminoles still call themselves the unconquered people.
Good.
We're going to talk about 2 more Native American incarceration periods that happened, unfortunately. So the first one is the Cheyenne, Arapaho, Kiowa, Comanche, and Caddo incarceration. This was a really good bit that was on the National Park Service's website, so I wanted to read it pretty straight out because I think it's really important. It says, the National Park Service is dedicated to telling all American stories. Some history hurts and some heals, but all of it can surprise and inspire us. Castillo de San Marcos National Monument is working closely with the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes of Oklahoma, the Kiowa tribe of Oklahoma, the Comanche Nation, and the Caddo Nation to bring tribal members to Fort Marion for annual gatherings. In November of 2022, we worked in partnership with the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes of Oklahoma to remember and honor warriors imprisoned at Fort Marion from 1875 to 1878. These memorial events and educational sessions provided opportunities for healing as well as gaining a better understanding of the legacy, truth, and impact of these imprisonments that are still felt today.
Good. Nice.
And then underneath that is like links to the YouTube playlist where these like sessions and stuff are all recorded.
Neat.
So this was imprisonment that was done from 1875 to 1878. There were 33 Cheyenne members that were imprisoned 27 Kiowa, 11 Comanche, 2 Arapaho, and 1 Caddo. There were also 10 Mexican prisoners that had been assimilated into these tribes. I will show this to you guys, but on their website, I'm not going to read them all. There is a list of each of the names of the prisoners. So you can see
good.
all of the names from all of the different nations and
Neat.
tribes that
That's
they're from.
beautiful.
So these prisoners were transported by wagon to a rail depot 165 miles east of their reservation. They were then traveled by train and boat through the western, midwestern, and southeastern regions of the country before they got to St. Augustine to be imprisoned at Fort Marion. And the conditions at Fort Marion were bad. They were kept in chains and shackles under lock and key and were confined to the casemates, their rooms, and the courtyard. The gun deck was blockaded and access only allowed when accompanied by a guard. The prisoners slept on the room floors, most of which were dirt, albeit some wooden floors were added later to make the conditions more sanitary. Still, disease was constantly an issue, and the continuous presence of the guards from the St. Francis barracks made the Native American prisoners incredibly anxious. The commanding officer at the St. Francis barracks was initially responsible for the Native Americans in St. Augustine, but after 6 months of incarceration, Lieutenant Richard Henry Pratt was given command over the prisoners at Fort Marion. Under his direction, the conditions at the fort changed drastically.
For the better?
Kind of.
Oh,
Yes and no.
okay.
So yes, in that all of the chains and shackles were removed, the blockade to the gun deck was taken down, the guards were relieved, and the rooms ceased to be used as living facilities. The prisoners were given wood to build housing accommodations on the north gun deck, a structure described as being 100 feet long in the width of the gun deck with rough board bunks on each side. Pratt also organized a guard unit composed of the prisoners themselves, and he furnished these guards with army uniforms and weapons. For the duration of their confinement, the prisoners carried out daily drills, performed all guard duties, and were subject to daily inspections, did morning exercise, went camping, learned how to sail and fish, learned agricultural skills. They also made periodic trips to Fort Matanzas. That he also organized or approved special events at the fort or in St. Augustine, including a dance, the production of stage performances, a buffalo chase, and a circus. Although he made their living conditions better, they were still prisoners. He also forced Western education upon them. They learned how to speak and write in English, as well as other elementary level Western skills. Most of the teachers were women, local women who volunteered their time. They were also encouraged to earn money by producing items to sell or making jobs, doing jobs in town. Majority of these men confined at Fort Marion created artwork that is now known as ledger drawings. This term refers to the artist's use of paper, usually from an accountant's ledger book, rather than the more traditional buffalo hide. So ledger drawings were created with lead pencils, ink, colored pencils, oil pastels, and watercolors. Today, modern Native American artists continue this tradition through modern ledger art. Many of the examples of ledger drawings from this period still exist today. Their surviving sketches from Fort Marion indicate the prisoners had access to blank or partly used ledgers, army rosters, daybooks, memorandum books, and other paper. So they include faces in profile, and near and far objects placed kind of on top of each other to show distance. This type of artwork is not typically on like shading, backgrounds, or color variations, but documenting situations and stories. Common themes included scenes of life on the plains, the journey to Florida, and the prisoners' experiences at the fort.
Huh.
In 1878, these prisoners were released to the care of the Indian Bureau. 22 of the formerly incarcerated expressed a desire to stay in the East, and Pratt made arrangements for them to have their education funded by white citizens. The remaining 5 went back to live with their families in the Northeast. Pratt tried to instruct them to give up their cultural identity and accept a new way of life. Most of them denied that. They did not do that.
Good.
And one of them was a Plains prisoner in an act of resistance. He etched a traditional Kiowa Sundance camp scene on the walls of the prison that you can still see. And then in 1886, the Apaches were incarcerated because we don't win, apparently. And we were shitty to the Native Americans. And they were in not good condition. So there were 500 Apaches eventually that would be captive inside these walls. Initially, a different Colonel Langdon was responsible for their physical well-being. And then after a while, Henry Pratt got put back in charge of them. The Apache prisoners were only confined to the fort for a little over a year. After that, they were moved to Alabama and then later to Fort Sill in Oklahoma. And then while they were in St. Augustine, there is a etching of a proud Apache fire dancer, and that one is also still able to be seen and is a physical reminder of 27 years of Native American confinement at the fort.
Bummer.
So now that I've said all this really sad shit, let's talk about the ghosts.
Yay, ghosts!
The reason that we're here, and I'm so sorry that was so much history.
It's okay. It's great. It's great to speak.
Okay, so hauntings. Oh, what are you doing?
I'm just being weird.
Okay.
Just being a freak.
Again, this fort is like 450 years old. It
Yeah.
is older than brother.
Let's pay back. He did that to me earlier while you were talking.
Stop.
This fort is old as fuck.
It's older than the formation of the United States.
Yeah.
It is St. Augustine is the oldest town in America.
Yeah.
If you didn't know that, now you do.
I didn't.
Yeah. St. Augustine is the oldest town in the United States.
Neat.
So it is 0% shocking that there's a ton of ghosts here. It is very haunted.
Yeah.
And shockingly, the NPS does not. It's not like available on the website, but like if you're talking to the tour guides and the park rangers and stuff, they won't lie to you.
They won't say like there's no ghosts.
Like they're like, yeah, we have ghosts.
I know St. Augustine is super haunted. Like I knew that.
Ghost Adventures did an episode here. It was season 2, episode 2 of Ghost
The
Adventures.
olden days.
So it wasn't, shitty Ghost Adventures. It was while they still had like life in them.
Yeah, it was when they were like, bro, oh my god, bro.
Yeah.
Bro.
Like, it was that era.
And I have also been to St. Augustine. I went in 2009. I was like 10 or 11 years old, depending on when in the year we went.
Yep.
The pictures that my dad sent me say October, but I'm guessing that's when we pulled them off the camera.
I see.
Less of when the actual pictures were taken.
Does it say it on the photograph?
No.
Okay.
It's like the file.
The file name. Okay.
We went with my Grammy and Pa because we have pictures. My Pa died in 2012 from cancer. So when I was guessing the year, I was like, well, Pa was on this trip. So
he was there.
He was there. And we have pictures of like the 3 of us with Grammy and Pa. And then like obviously with my parents. And like I'm going to have a bunch of pictures because I'm going to go through the file of pictures that my father has of this trip. Anyway, hauntings. The most often reported hauntings at this site, there is a lot of this is residual, which makes sense for how old the fort is and how much shit happened there.
Right.
Between 2 major sieges, the Civil War, both the Union and the Confederacy occupied St. Augustine at different times. Mm-hmm. So the Fort Marion at the time, because the Castillo saw both sides of that war, even though it was not directly impacted, because Florida really didn't take a whole lot of damage in the Civil War. A lot of it's residual. So there's a ghost of a Spanish soldier seen jumping from one of the high walls, likely reenacting his death, which is big sad.
There's a ghost of the Alamo that's that same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's soldiers still on duty that walk the battlements of the fort. One of them specifically carries a lantern. He's probably the most famous ghost because you
Lantern
can
guy.
see the light. You see the light phenomena. Like you see the light, the lantern light when he's walking around.
That's cool.
Neat.
Heavy boot steps running through empty hallways. That's pretty common. It's a
It's a
military encampment.
Fort.
And phantom lights appearing from the watchtower despite there being no electricity there.
Zoom tight. And another one.
All right. However, there are more hauntings.
However,
Visitors have been pushed by an unseen force outside the old cannon powder room.
do that.
In the old barracks, one witness saw the indentation of a man lying down on one of the old army cots, which I hate. During a paranormal investigation, a psychic was attacked by the spirit of a former prisoner. The investigators were able to identify the spirit of British pirate Andrew Ranson, who was executed at the fort.
Hell yeah.
One of the most prevalent hauntings at the fort comes from events that occurred in the late 1700s.
Yeah.
Colonel Garcia Marti was stationed at the fort along with his young assistant, Captain Abella. Marty's wife, Dolores, was much younger than him and was known for being friendly and outgoing. On the other hand, Marty himself was said to be stern and reserved. As Marty became busier at the fort and Abella spent more time with Dolores, the two fell in love. One day, Marty noticed the smell of Dolores's perfume on Abella. A few days later, both Dolores and Abella had vanished.
He disappeared then.
Marty told the other soldiers that Abella had been sent to Cuba on a special mission. Meanwhile, he held a dinner party and informed Dolores' friends that she had gone to stay with an aunt in Mexico after falling ill.
He disappeared them.
Neither of them ever returned from those trips. In 1833, about 50 years after their disappearance, a soldier was doing research on the architecture of the Castillo de San Marcos. In the dungeon, he realized that part of the wall sounded hollow when he knocked on it.
Oh, no.
Realizing there was a secret room behind the brick, the wall was torn down. Oh, no. Inside lay two human skeletons chained to the wall.
Oh, my God.
The strong smell of a woman's
Lord.
perfume hung in the air.
Oh, my God.
Marty had apparently imprisoned Dolores and Abella and left them to die.
He disappeared. I knew he disappeared them. I didn't think it was going to be that fucked.
And then today, visitors will still suddenly smell perfume when looking into the secret room where the two lovers died.
Oh, my God.
I
I bet it smells like gardenia.
Where the lovers died? Who was who?
Marty was the original husband. Abella was his assistant. Dolores, married to Marty, had an affair with Abella because Marty left her alone with him all the time.
Got it.
And
Okay.
she was much younger than he was.
Much younger than her husband, and his assistant was
Closer
also
in
younger
age.
than him.
Yeah, understood. I've got it now.
They were like cute little 20-somethings who decided to fuck around.
Yeah.
And unfortunately,
Find
they
out.
found out.
I
So-
just couldn't keep track of who was who because
Yeah.
all of their names were gender neutral enough that I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know who's who.
Yeah.
So the ghost of Osceola, the Seminole war
Yes.
leader, was also
Who passed away
one
on the property.
And
scene.
buried.
Apparently, I don't know the truth of this. For sure that they see the ghost of him.
Mm-hmm.
There are some reports that his corpse was beheaded after death as like a souvenir. I think that's maybe
Hearsay.
embezzlement of the story or embellishment of the story.
You
However,
moved it.
Sorry.
there is reports of a floating head
Oh,
in the central courtyard of the fort.
freaky.
Some people claim it is Osceola's ghost. However, there are also reports that it may be another executed soldier or
Right.
prisoner at the fort. Not necessarily. There is Osceola's ghost is seen. It's
There's
not guaranteed.
also a decapitated head ghost.
Yes, and
Got
there's
it.
like both. They see the both decapitated body and just the head hanging out, which is awful. The ghost of just a head freaks me out.
That's a little funny.
What's worse, just the head or the decapitated body?
I think the
Just
body.
the head. For me, it's just the head.
See, for me, I think that the decapitated body is worse because ghosts are notorious for not like that you don't see feet.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just like, all he wanted to generate was the head. Like the rest of him's there,
Right.
but it's not. But I can imagine that the rest of it's there.
Right.
If the head's not there, the
Right.
head is not there.
Yeah.
So one of the most frequently encountered spirits is Captain Domingo Martinez, who died defending the fort in the 1702 British siege. Visitors consistently report seeing him on the gun deck at sunset, wearing his distinct colonial Spanish uniform and maintaining his vigil. He also appears solid enough to cast shadows, which is scary. And park rangers have documented numerous instances of visitors attempting to speak with him before realizing they're talking to a ghost. His
That's
presence
cool.
is also often accompanied by the sound of Spanish military commands and the smell of gunpowder and leather.
Oh, cool.
Again,
What a good smell. Also,
Osceola's ghost is often encountered in the Northwest Bastion, which is where his cell was located. And he appears in his traditional Seminole dress, which is why I don't think the headless ghost is necessarily Osceola.
Right. I would love to have an olfactory ghost experience. I've never had one.
it's pretty cool.
Witnesses often report that Osceola's spirit communicates through telepathic images rather than words, sharing visions of his people's suffering and his own betrayal by the U.S. military, which would scare the crap out of me if I just saw a picture in my head from a ghost.
I also love that ghost is like, fuck you. I don't care that I know English. No, I don't.
Yeah.
Here's a
I'm
picture.
communicating with pictures.
The dungeon levels house anonymous spirits of both British and Confederate prisoners that died in captivity. Their presence manifesting as cold spots, disembodied voices pleading for release, and the phantom sound of rattling chains. One of the most disturbing is a collective entity known as the Lost Company, a group of Spanish soldiers who were accidentally sealed into a storage room during the construction in 1784.
How?
And I don't know, and discovered decades later as skeletons still clutching their weapons. Their collective spirit manifests as the sound of multiple footsteps marching in formation through the fort's corridors, particularly during the pre-dawn hours where they conducted their original patrol duties.
You ever built a wall so fast you accidentally lost an entire company?
That sounds like a
crazy.
fuck around and find out kind of situation.
Maybe. Paranormal activity at the Castillo, which this is pretty well documented,
Yeah.
increases dramatically as soon as the sun goes down.
Amazing.
You'll have some daytime stuff. Second the sun goes down, shit goes crazy.
It's party time.
Party.
It seems like the coquina walls seem to amplify the supernatural energy.
Makes sense. They're corpses.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
shells.
Yeah. Or not corpses, but they once held life.
Yeah.
The gun deck experiences the most consistent phenomena because you're seeing apparitions of soldiers, you're hearing cannon fire, you're hearing
Right,
those
yeah,
audible stuff. And they do reenactments there, but these sounds often happen when no reenactments are scheduled. So they're not doing those things. I think it's probably increasing the energy to stick around because they are doing reenactments on the site, which is fine. There's often electronic equipment issues, digital cameras. They say producing orbs. We feel how we feel about orbs. I'm not going to discredit these people's stuff, but without seeing the pictures, it's hard for me to prove or disprove that.
This is great.
They are concentrated. They usually show up around where the highest trauma was, including the dungeon and the execution sites.
Makes sense.
The fort's the unique acoustic properties of coquina, which is designed to amplify sound for making it sound like there's more people there to fight you than there are inside the battlement. Also seems to enhance paranormal audio phenomena, including people reporting hearing Spanish conversations, military command, weapons prep in places that nobody is at.
Right.
Temperature fluctuations are extreme and sudden throughout the fortress, where the dungeons where the dungeon areas maintain supernatural cold spots that register 15 to 20 degrees below ambient temperature regardless of the weather conditions.
Wow.
That's a pretty good temperature jump.
The fort's numerous and mirrors and reflective surfaces installed for modern visitor safety consistently capture shadowy figures and period-dressed entities that are invisible to the naked eye.
Dope.
During
love a
thunderstorms,
mirror.
the fort becomes extraordinarily active, with witnesses reporting the sounds of battle, phantom cannon fire that seems to respond to the actual thunder, and the appearance of entire ghostly military units conducting siege preps. The most compelling evidence comes from the fort's security cameras, which regularly capture footage of figures in period military dress moving through the areas that are closed to the public during overnight hours.
I for one, would love to see an entire military cohort of ghosts. Be like, look at them.
They do.
Look at them in their lines.
They
Remind
do.
me to tell you something after this.
They offer both daytime historical tours and apparently, I didn't find this on the website. It wouldn't surprise me if they just don't have it and it's just like what you see on site. They do offer, or if it's through like a third party company, there are specialized evening ghost tours that you can do.
Neat.
That talks about both ghosts and the fort history. The NPS provides comprehensive historical context while acknowledging the fort's paranormal reputation, making it one of the few government installations that officially recognizes its ghostly residents. I don't think they could not acknowledge them with as much activity as there is. And then, yeah, like everything else, those interested in serious paranormal investigation, sometimes the NPS will allow permits overnight research by qualified paranormal investigation teams, though such access requires special permits and professional credentials. I don't know what that looks like.
I was about to say, that's not us right now.
That's not us right now.
I was like, how do we get a credential?
What college do I have to go to?
But that is all that
Scotland.
I have about the Castillo. I hope you learned something.
Everything you told me was
Please
news to
tell me
me.
what you thought, what you learned, how you feel.
Yeah, that was super cool.
Every single word you said was news to me. I had literally never heard of this place. I don't know a ton about Florida other than like what we learn in Texas history or
Right.
like in like Texas education history classes,
Yeah.
which is decent, right? Like we learn about it being a colony and whatever, but we don't go into the nitty gritty because it's Florida, not Texas. We learn about it as part of U.S. history. So I knew,
Not.
like you like to say, I knew not, and that was really, really cool. That was really interesting. I would like to go to there.
Yeah, we can go to there.
Yeah, we should absolutely go to there.
Like, you talked about Fort Moultrie for like exactly 2 seconds because somebody got transferred there. I went to Fort Moultrie when we went to
cool.
On Ryan's Grand
on Ryan's
Road Trip
adventure.
Adventure.
And I can't believe I didn't ask the park ranger if it was haunted. I was a little busy, but yeah, no, I didn't know any of this. That's really, really interesting. All the ghosts are really cool. I would like to go to there.
I would like to go to there.
there's lots
probably
of cool
did not
things.
cover. I did not hit all of the history points. I'm sure I missed some major stuff, but there's 450 years, and I don't have that kind of time.
Yeah.
And you did a good job. Like I thoroughly feel like I know a decent enough amount that if somebody asked me like, "Hey, do you know anything about Castillo de San Marcos?" I could be like,
Yeah.
"Let me tell you about it. I know some
I will
sieges.
say-
I know some shit that happened there."
And I don't know if it's because I went there. I do remember because Ghost Adventures was on Netflix for a time.
Yeah.
In the early days of Netflix, before that was like when that was the only like streaming service that
Right.
we
When
had.
everything was on Netflix.
Everything was on Netflix. I remember watching the shit out of that particular episode of Ghost Adventures
because you'd been there.
because I had been there, and
Yeah.
I was like, oh, "This is so cool." Because it was recent enough in my memory that I was like, I remember like looking at these
Right.
things and being there. And also, everybody's going to laugh at pictures of 10-year-old Mackenzie in this bright blue sundress. My siblings are
There's a
both
picture
wearing.
of her in a hole.
There's lots of pictures of me climbing ladders and in a hole. At least
around
one where I'm like
cannons.
looking up at probably my mom, whoever's taking the picture. I am excited I will be looking through more pictures today. As of recording is pre-Christmas. When I go home for Christmas, I will be looking through those pictures. I'm sure because I asked my dad for pictures.
Yeah.
Chris and Sarah know this. It turned into an entire saga of my dad going through an entire hard drive of my family. And some really interesting, silly things came out of it. from like
Some
my
discoveries
siblings.
were
Some
made.
discoveries were made. So I'm intrigued to see what else I find when I go look for more pictures of the Castillo, so I can have some fun. First, whatever we call that. Oh Lord. Primary sources.
Primary sources, which
Um,
is insane because it's like when I looked through every single photograph in this house to try and find a single picture of my family at the Lexington and found zero.
Yeah.
And we went there, I don't know, 150 times when we lived in Corpus Christi.
Yeah.
We lived there.
So I think that's all you need to know.
Wait, did you say what you
sorry,
learned?
What did you learn?
I learned all sorts of stuff.
Okay.
And I also realized I knew more than I thought I did.
Well, that's good.
Because I was like, oh, yeah. My dad did tell me that when we went. I just didn't remember.
Yeah, goldfish boy.
Yeah.
I think that's all you need to know until we go. About the Castillo de San Marcos. I hope you enjoyed this topic and come back next week for something fun and exciting.
Thanks for listening.
This podcast is for weirdos.
Are you a weirdo?
Thursdays are for the phenomena.